to Enablement Uncanned. We're back again. And hey, Lawrence, how are we, my friend?
Yeah, what's going on, man?
Yeah, very, very good. And we're both in strange locations today, right? So again, I'm not in the usual. I'm in another hotel room, another day, another hotel room, and you were in a coffee shop. But hey, not Joyce to not down to planning, right?
We make it work, We move is what they say here in
We
London.
move.
We move.
We have to make it work. I mean, why else, right? We have to do it.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, for the listeners, I'm here with Lawrence Wayne. He is the founder of Storytecker, where he spends his days, his nights, his all of his hours he has spare helping B2B sales teams build buyer-first sales playbooks that accelerate deals without rigid methodologies that we all ignore. And when I mean we all, I mean reps like me, right? Which is great, right? I mean, this kind of takes us into the topic that we want to talk about today. And I think we're going to title this one, Are Sales Methodologies Dead? Right? And about rethinking enablement for the modern buyer. Give us your uncanned hot take on that. What do you think about sales methodologies? And give us a bit of an intro to yourself, Lawrence. Let the listeners know who you are.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm just gonna start with a hot take. I think most teams could probably cut about 80% of the sales playbook, and they would be just fine. Um, so now let me back up and give you a little bit of my background. I got started in sales 12 years ago at an Apple store, selling MacBooks at the front of house, and then I was quickly
Amazing.
moved to a team called the business sales team that sat in the stock room on the phone all day, and we would sell to SMBs, mid-market companies who were using Apple products for their employees and needed custom software configuration. So that was my intro to G2P sales. Uh, and I wasn't even really that good to start. I think my curiosity just made me successful. And also, I was very meticulous about my follow-ups and the content that I was sending to my prospects. And I think that's what got me into some really interesting conversations. So I've always had a creative background. I've worked in marketing myself. So I was kind of this stellar with marketing principles. And that turned into a role in sales enablement later on. So I've built from the ground up 3 different enablement teams. And most of the success, especially with some of the older sellers, has been around, when I mean old, I mean experience. I don't mean
Not just
ancient.
old.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, having a lot of tenure. I think a lot of the success comes from writing. And I really think I would bet on that being the skill of the next 5, 10 years in sales, rather than conversational charisma and being great at being on the phone and in the meetings. Reps are getting less meetings, they're getting less calls, and a lot of the deal happens in between those meetings when you're not in the room. So
Mhm.
that is kind of what I've hedged my future on, and I've seen success in the teams that I've worked with, and now I do it for teams all over the world.
Yeah, it's amazing. So writing and clarity is better than pressure and persuasion, let's say, right? And actually being there in the instance,
Exactly.
which we'll dive into a lot a bit later on. So give us that dive into methodologies, right? We were talking about this before we came online, and we were talking about how the med picks, the challenges, to name a few, and I do like them. I do like them.
Yeah.
Tell them we're a med pick house here at Bigtincan. We do med pick. I'm told to fill out my metrics and all of this stuff, but is it just a tick box exercise?
Yeah. So let's be clear, like these methodologies have come from years of experience of these people who built them. I love people like Keenan at Gap Selling.
Yeah.
There's MedShape, there's Challenger. Brent Adamson has been a huge inspiration to me. So there's so many great minds that have spent years coming up with the principles that have created these methodologies. The issue I have with a lot of these methodologies is it's really hard, especially as an enablement leader, to plug them in to a team setting and consistently get value from your sellers from them, consistently get engagement and activity, and also to prove that they're leading to more close deal. So I think the principles that make up these methodologies are really sound, but you can always mix and match. You can almost kind of just like pick the pieces that you like from each one that will apply to the deal that you're working on. And that's what I see sellers do. They learn the concepts and then they kind of use that and deploy them at the right time based on their pipeline and their accounts they're working with.
Such a valid point because there's, I definitely use bits of all of them,
Yeah.
right? I'm a big fan of Challenger only because I like the way that you go into a customer meeting and you kind of challenge their status quo and you have the conversation. You say, hey, have you thought about it this way? Right? I much prefer that as opposed to the regimented med picks. But that being said, I can see where the benefit of metrics are really, really important in a business sales cycle to understand how they can attribute that back to revenue and whatever. So it's taking bits from each. Do I tick the box sometimes? Yeah. I'm happy to admit that. Probably shouldn't admit that on the podcast, but it happens, right?
Yeah.
Um, and you're right. I think we obsess, and enablement teams as a whole obsess over training sellers to say the right thing, do the right thing, but we actually need to focus more on what the buyers see or need to see, I should say, right?
Yeah, I think it is more valuable for the business, for the leadership, than it is for the seller. As a sales
Mm,
leader, I want to understand the health of every deal. I want consistent forecasting. So I want to have a rubric or a framework for how we think about these deals and how far along we are. So from a forecasting perspective, it makes total sense. But in terms of its value to the seller, and even worse, its value to the buyer, it's next to none. So I like to think about things as how do we provide the most value to the buyer first and prioritize buyer engagement from our key stakeholders? We'll have a much better hold on the success and the health of the deal than if we say, okay, we need to have this for every single deal, and we're not really giving the buyer a reason to take that second or third or fourth meeting.
yeah, no, that's spot on. Because you were in North Carolina recently, right? I saw on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I was running a SKO for a team called Juniper Networks out in Raleigh,
Amazing.
which is really fun.
The the only reason I say that I was in Raleigh just before. Well, I was in Raleigh towards the tail end of last year with a customer, and beautiful part of the world. But when I saw that, it made me think I better ask you on the podcast to see what you were doing out there. But it seemed like there was a lot of positivity off the back of it that I could see on the post. So
Yeah, one of the things that really stuck out to me, and this is something I've known, but it still surprises me when it comes up, is that the skills that make you successful in sales enablement are a lot of the skills that make you successful as a seller, specifically a strategic seller. So I always hear this debate of like, you shouldn't be learning from sales enablement leaders who haven't sold or sat in that seat. And
yeah,
there is some truth to that. But I think that those skill sets are really transferable. And I even know some sales enablement leaders, shout out to Tad Tarani, who carry a bag and actually sit in the seat and will, close deals themselves. So I think you do have to be careful when you want to earn the respect and the trust of sellers, um, to make sure that you know what you're talking about and also employ your top sellers who help you develop your strategy. But one of the big takeaways from that session was you got to earn the skeptics in the room when you're running a sales training or a sales workshop. And it's the same in sales. You got to
hmm
earn the skeptics and you got to get them on side, and that will help you build the momentum.
yeah, get the trust built with the teams, right? Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're right. And the thing is, and I've spoken this on previous sessions, is that not one process or not one program fits everybody. They're all different, and you've got to get to know them. And it's interesting that you say you find it's better who's kind of done sales in the past and they've switched to enablement, and that's a very transferable skill. And I believe that. I mean, I think one day maybe I might end up in enablement, as in
Yes.
physically an enablement leader. I mean, I'd love to do it. It's a big,
Yeah.
big, big. I enjoy talking about it. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing these, right? So
Yes.
a big transferable thing. No, I must say, I agree with you
Um, yeah, I think that also we'll see more enablement people and enablement leaders actually be willing to carry a bag and go into sales and show that they know what they're talking about. That's something that I always had the confidence to do with the teams that I was in. And I think that came through, um, in the teams that I was leading. So don't be afraid to actually get out there, get your hands dirty in some pipeline, because it'll earn you that respect with the team that you
there.
know
Yeah.
what you're talking about and that they're going to deliver.
Yeah, it's putting your money where your mouth is, right? I mean, if you're bringing a
Yeah,
new philosophy in or a new way of doing things, why should I follow your way if you can't prove to me it doesn't work,
yeah.
right?
And
So if you
another way to do
definitely go
that
and do,
is
yeah,
another way to do that is to also find your top sellers and involve them in the
yeah,
process of building out your programs. There's something called the IQ effect, which just means that people ascribe more value to things they had a hand in building. And so when you involve top sellers and people that are respected within the team in your process, your message is going to land that much better. And you're going to have people on the inside who are helping you generate that momentum. So that's been a
yeah,
big unlock for me, when I first got started in sales enablement, is getting the right people on side early, getting them involved in the process, being transparent about what you don't know, and listening and seeing what works in their process that you can then transfer over. Because some people will have a process that changes with every account, and that's okay.
mm,
Let them do their thing, but that's not really transferable. So I like to try to pick out the pieces that we can scale to the rest of the team and then use those.
It's just like selling, isn't it? The
Exactly.
process,
Exactly.
getting in early, finding out the process, exactly understanding the characters that you've got around you, utilizing your champions. There we are using medpick again. Utilizing your favorite people to obviously demonstrate the best practices. Yeah, I mean it's very transferable. So why do most, I say most, it's not most, why do traditional enablement as we know it, why does it fall short? What are the problems that you're seeing?
I think the issue is we need to move to a more of a strategic position. And in order to do that, we really got to leverage our RevOps partners. We've got to leverage the data that we're going to see. Because same as sales, if you can't connect what you're doing to an executive priority, you're not going to get the backing that you need. So I really think there are three big problems that I'm seeing in enablement that's stopping it from being successful. One, thank you. One is it's too generic. It's not a lot of, for instance, medpick, right? You get trainings from medpick, you get trainings from Challenger. They're not specific to your buyer. They're not specific to the accounts you have in your pipeline. Do they understand the decisions that your unique buyers are dealing with? No. So if I take an off-the-shelf training and try to apply it to my team, it's not going to work. I need to make sure that I have examples that are from real pipeline or real conversations and real buyer language. So that's the first piece. The second is I don't think it's actionable enough. I think that a lot of it ends up being like TED Talk theory versus let's get people in the field actually practicing this and doing it. So with all the trainings that I run, I like to, or even programs, it doesn't have to be a training, but you need to bring a deal that you're working on to the session that we can work through over the course of that training. And
Yeah.
I want you to leave with some concrete action that you can take on the heels of that and a message that you've actually refined that you know is going to land with a specific stakeholder. So we need to be really specific and clear about what we want sellers to do versus what we want them to know.
And it's exactly the way you're talking there is focusing more on the buyer than the actual seller themselves, because most deals don't die. Well, most deals die, I should say. Most deals don't die. Good English, that. Most deals die because buyers can't internally sell, not because of the actual rep performance, right? I mean, that's the crux of it.
Exactly. Exactly. So we need to be clear about what we want sellers to do and what we want them to produce. That's going to get land with the buyer and enable your champions. So that's the second piece. And then the last piece is it's really hard to measure. So if we can be clear on what we can actually affect, right? Because if I say, hey, I'm going to raise the win rate by 10% in the next 90 days, like there's so many other factors that contribute to that. You know, it could
Yeah.
be product, it could be marketing campaigns, it could be changes in the market. I can't really attribute that. Me as enablement, I've done that. But if I say, okay, I'm going to help our stage 2 to stage 3 conversion rate, because a lot of our deals are dying after discovery or after our first demo, we're losing engagement. That's a little bit closer to what I can do. And then if I say, actually, the way that we do that is we engage stakeholders, our key, like personas or IPP, and I can say, what's the engagement rate on each account from our top key personas? That's something I can definitely influence.
Yeah.
So I need to like focus not too far leading that no one cares. I'm not going to say, hey, we had 100% attendance for all of our training sessions this quarter. Like no one cares about that.
So what?
But if it's so far down the road that it's like no one believes you, that's also the problem. So you got to find kind of that sweet spot of not so up market that no one cares and not so down market that nobody believes you.
Yeah, absolutely love that. It's so important. It's so important to be able to do that and focus on those things that matter. And you talk
Yeah.
about the power of writing, right? And a lot of what you do, because I think one of my biggest assets, and this is why I'm super interested in what you've got to say about this. One of my biggest assets for me is meeting people, right? Going
Mhm.
out, being, I think we've written down charismatic, not that I'm saying I'm charismatic, but being, I don't know, in the moment with the customers, with the prospects, just what I'm going to be doing today, right? And having those conversations face to face. And writing isn't my strong point, right? But
Yep.
I know you mentioned about how the power of writing enterprise sales, utilizing those decision-making documents, the business cases, the recap emails, the mutual action plans, those types of things are probably more important than the actual charismatic piece that we were just talking about, right?
Absolutely. I think that we're moving into a new age, a new era in sales. And I think being good on the phone and being good in person is still very valuable because that's something AI really can't reproduce. But I think where AI can really help people like yourself is that you can have the call transcripts and use that to draft messages based on what you talked about. So your
Mm,
role kind of switches to like a prompting machine for the buyer to pull out the language of what you need to know to advance the deal. And as you do that and you capture that, you can use that information to now craft a message that's going to resonate with them and their leadership based on the questions that you asked. So where in the past it was a lot of, more meetings, more pipeline, more calls, it was volume and force. It's going to be a lot more deep work, strategic. Okay, let me set aside 90 minutes at the top of my day to think about this key account and what's going on so that I can show them that I understand their situation enough to
yeah.
advance things and moving forward. So I think that's kind of we already see it in strategic and enterprise, but I think it's even moving down market in SMB. It's like we need to take more time to find more meaning versus building more meetings. So
Yeah.
I think it's more finesse, less force.
It's a valuable point, and hey, we got 20 minutes into this without mentioning AI, and you've managed to throw it in. It's always on the lips, right? AI, but
Yes,
I'm using it more and more. I think every day I'm using it more. Honestly, it's crazy.
absolutely. Yeah.
To do those things you're talking about, because what would have taken me, today I need to write a business case. I need to write a plan on the first 3 months of onboarding, what that looks like for the customer, right? A phased
Mhm.
approach to onboarding. It would take me 1 to 2 weeks to do that, right?
Yep.
And because I'd have to go and speak to this individual, that individual, and pull all their information in and draft it out, send it to marketing for co-branding. Whereas now I can do that within an hour. That's the
Exactly.
reality. So yeah, I guess those
I
things
think
are becoming more and more important.
the skill is really knowing how to prompt it and then understanding the inputs to give it. I'm really interested in the context that you can give AI because if you're building something like a custom VPT or your own um, tool, you need to know how to prompt it. You need to know the information to give it. You need to know
Mm,
how to use things like deep research to then spit out these outputs that are 80, 70% of the way there. And then you have the expertise to then start at that point and edit and get it amazing.
hmm
So I think it's a lot easier to edit something than to start from scratch. And that's really the value. It's like I can start with something really good and then use my expertise and my specific knowledge to take it over the edge.
Yeah, to kind of tailor it to the actual customer themselves.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, if we are utilizing generative AI to speed up those tasks and get more of that, the power of writing in your sales process, you're probably going to do better, right? You're going to spend more time or less time doing it, I guess, and more time then actually just focusing on the important stuff with the customer. Um,
100%.
so I guess that's the evolution of the playbook, right? Because playbook's been going around for about 50 years. Older than me, but playbook as a term is such a, we'll say experienced again, not old. We used old earlier, but it's an old term. It's an experienced term, playbook, right?
Yeah, the thing about playbooks is they should be built by buyers. I mean, sorry, they should be built by your sellers even. Like
Yeah.
your buyer language creates your playbook. It is an adaptive, fluid thing. As a seller, once I go through onboarding, I don't have a reason to revisit most of the playbook. It's more of a rule book, than
hmm
anything. And I'm looking to see, okay, with this account, does this now belong to customer success or can I still work with it? Like it's more of like rules than it is the plays that you actually run and what's working. But because the market changes so quickly, your playbook's going to be ancient in 6 to 12 months. So rather than having to redo that, why don't we set up the structure to learn about the people that we're selling to, our buyers, our process, and how that had shifted based on the buyer's process and then also our products and what products we have. And that comes mostly from product marketing, how it's developing and how it's solving those needs. So now that we have this call recording software, the seller is the leader in the market. It's not product marketing. It's not user research. It's the people who are talking to people about making a buying decision every single day. That
hmm
information should be reused, recycled throughout the rest of the company to hear the sound bites that are coming from our market and what people are looking for. So that information is what should then inform your playbook so that as a seller, I can always go back to the playbook and say, okay, I'm dealing with this persona and they're judged on these metrics and they're trying to make this decision. What other deals have we had like that? And what are we seeing from the market?
That's perfect. But we see teams all the time creating playbooks without speaking to their frontline staff, without speaking to buyers and understanding what the journey is, right? because traditionally, not necessarily at Bigtincan, but in other places, I've seen playbooks that are created internally with the salespeople at the forefront of the mind. Like this is how you should do it. But have you asked the buyer? Have we asked what's happening in the market? So,
Exactly. It needs to be account specific. There's market specific knowledge, great, and that is
mhm.
going to continue to change, but those shifts happen over a much slower time frame. Account level shifts happen much quicker and it's much more fluid. So I just want to be able to see what other people in similar situations have done. And that will give me a reason as a seller to continually go back to the playbook.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. This is what you're doing, right? As a story techer, this is you. This is trying to get people to do it in the right way.
This is what I'm betting the farm on, man, because it's not really about sales training. Like I do a lot of SKOs and that sort of thing, and it's fun.
Yeah,
But I'm concerned with what happens after the SKO. How do we build an operating rhythm that doesn't rely on training, but you have real coaching moments based on stellar outputs like a business case and executive summary that we can give consistent guidance on. So I'm always thinking about how do we pull these insights from your call transcripts. And what I start with, I'll take 12 close won deals, close loss deals. Give me the transcripts from those deals. I'll run my prompts on top of it to build some real buyer insights. And then I'll show your team, your enablement team, how to then rerun those prompts as you fill up, as you get more calls to see how your playbook evolves. And then I'll run training that's specific to your buyer language. So whatever point that your deals are getting stuck, let's run some training or let's
hmm
run some coaching that's specific to that buyer decision in your market and your account.
That's so powerful. So powerful to be able to do that. And you're seeing success, right? I mean, I know you've taken you've taken a customer or taken someone from stalled deals through to six-figure wins in a
Oh
fairly short
yeah,
period of time, right?
I'll tell you this story. I think what you're referencing is a company that worked in
Yes.
Estonia. Their sales manager, when we first started, I'm actually not sure. I think it was a referral how we met. But when we first started, they were having trouble kind of moving up market into some of the larger mid-market enterprise deals. A lot of their deals were in the mid to low five-figure range. And when we started focusing on just strategic writing, just that piece, they started traction a lot faster with six-figure, even beyond seven-figure deals are starting to get move forward in the sales process a lot quicker. So just that sales cycle and that getting those deals unstuck, getting people sitting up in their chair and getting that engagement from executives has changed a lot in terms of how they approach deals. So we'll have some more concrete data to give you here in the next give it month or two in terms of how win rates and that sort of thing has changed. But it's a lot quicker to be able to see, oh, we're getting out of stage 2, stage 3 a lot quicker because we're showing them what they need to see to show
Yeah.
to the rest of the teams.
Yeah, that's amazing. When you're talking about deal cycles, you're talking six-figure ops here and deal cycles of under 90 days. I mean, in an enterprise, it's unheard of. It really
Yeah,
is unheard of if you're talking right from the start through to close one, right?
yeah,
I mean, my average deal cycle, you're looking at 6 to 9 months,
yeah.
on a usual kind of basis. But yeah, getting it under 90 days for six figures, I mean, that's pretty good going.
It depends on the selling motion. It depends on the
For
product.
sure.
Like I'm not a magician here. I can't do it for every team.
What do you mean? Of course you are.
But I will say I'm confident in the results that I can get regardless of your sales cycle lane, being able to chop that down pretty considerably based on the selling motion and what the buyers are doing.
But that's what I mean. Buyers want to be able to advocate internally without needing the seller present. I mean, that's the buyers spend 90% of their time on the buying journey without speaking to the seller in the first place, right? The seller
Right.
doesn't come in until right at the end. We know that, right? We know that from
Yeah.
experience. We know that even in your day-to-day life, if you're going to go and buy a car, you look on the website first, you do this first, you do that first, before you actually speak to the person that's on the other end on the sales. It's a very, very small part that they're with you. So yeah, buyers do want to advocate internally, right? Um,
And what you need to do as a seller too, like I had a seller tell me this the other day, is like as I move into some of these larger deals, I'm not finding projects anymore, I'm building them.
mm,
So it's not like you're looking for the need that's already shown up within the company. You're actually helping them recognize the need and tying that to executive priorities. So it's basically being able to show your buyers, I'm better off with you a part of the deal than I am with you not a part of the deal. And so trusting your expertise, trusting your business acumen, and being able to put that on display is what earns you the right to be able to sell.
So come on then, Lawrence. Give us some advice. Let's talk about practical advice for enablement leaders, right? Because there are enablement leaders that will listen to this. I promise you, it does happen. We are getting some good traction, which is great. What should enablement teams be focusing on? Because there's so much noise in the market. You see on LinkedIn every day, you should focus on this, you should do this methodology, you should do that. What should they be focusing on? Let's strip it back to basics.
Oh, okay. So I'm going to try to break this down as simply as I can, because I know we've gotten a little high level, but let's see how we can break this down into something really simple. So um, I will start here. If your training doesn't stick, your deals do. So if you can keep that in mind, and then I'm going to take you through basically 3 steps that I try to use with all of my clients. First, take if you use something like Gong or Chorus or one of those tools, look at your top 10 or top 12 recent wins and losses and pull as many call transcripts as you can from those deals. Um, then you can upload that to something like ChatGPT. I like to use Notebook LM for this because it's focused on that content.
Mm-hmm.
And then run some prompts to understand what are the key decisions, the micro decisions that were a part of that deal. So every deal is like one major decision, buy or not, but there's a lot of these micro decisions that are involved, as in we need to do something or can we let this wait? What's out there that could potentially solve our problem? What competitors are we looking at? What are the metrics that we need this to solve for? And then you can build like a really in-depth win-loss report using some direct fire quotes on what's winning deals within the past, let's say, 3 to 6 months versus to now. Once you've done that and you've pulled those buyer insights, then choose whatever, like prioritize those challenges that your buyers are having and design a simple doc that you want your reps and your buyers to complete together. So this would be like an executive summary, a business
Mm-hmm.
case, or you can use something internally like a deal review sheet, an account plan. But you need to focus on one specific output. Don't focus on what sellers need to know. Don't focus on knowledge and skills. Focus on an output that you want them to produce and then work backwards from that. So
Okay.
you want to set really clear examples of what good looks like for those outputs. And on the level of like, for instance, in an executive summary, you might have a problem statement. What does a 4 out of 5 problem statement look like versus a 3 out of 5 problem statement? So how are we able to measure the difference there, right? So that it's very clear across the team, from peers to leaders to managers, how to give clear, objective feedback that's not rooted in like, oh, that could be stronger. It's like, I'm giving this a 3 because it doesn't have validated metrics from one of your buyers. If you can get that, here's how I would go about it. Then we can move that up to a 4. So very clear. And then what I'll do third is I'll actually give that scorecard, just so to speak, to ChatGPT. I'll build a custom GPT based on that, so we can give feedback objectively. And then I'll also see how we can maximize peer feedback, manager
Amazing.
feedback. And we'll run like these coaching sessions weekly with your pods or with your team. So let's say you have a manager who might have 6 or 7 people on their team. We run some weekly strategy sessions. But the thing about that is like 35, let's say it's 50 minutes, 35 of those minutes should be spent practicing and actually like working on your deals and getting feedback. So this is not a lecture-based thing. This is do it, get feedback. Do it again, get more feedback. Do it like you
Mm-hmm.
can get 4 or 5 rounds of feedback in 35 minutes and you get 5 times stronger than if you got 1 round of feedback and then move to the next person.
Yeah, for sure.
And then you can review those outputs in one-to-ones and help your reps coach to their biggest gaps individually. Because it shouldn't be a one-size-fits-all thing. It should be, what does this rep need based on what's in their pipeline to hit their targets? So if you can do this consistently for like 12 weeks straight, I guarantee you your deals will start to pick up steam. Your pipeline will get unclogged a little bit, and you'll start to see those results. So that's my biggest tactical feedback. Hopefully that was something that you can take and use, but that's kind of how I approach it.
And you heard it here first, ladies and gents. He can guarantee. So he can guarantee it'll go up. So
I guarantee if you work with me, I can show you the right ways to go about it. But I mean,
I
even if you
love it.
don't, like you can take these things out. I promise you the feedback. You'll see some sort of benefit.
There's still so many people not doing it though, right?
Yeah.
You have mentioned AI a couple of times there. You use. Why wouldn't you use that? I mean, you could have done it without AI, right? You could have listened back to it. You could have written it down. I mean, it would have taken you weeks, even months, to do what you're doing there in a much quicker sense. Um, but
I've
it's
listened to
just
hundreds of
smart.
gong call as the head
Yeah,
of enablement. I've listened to close to the 1,000 range now and just gong call. So to be able to have that now and be able to synthesize that quickly, I
yeah.
know what I'm looking for when I'm listening. I build prompts and I say, hey, tell me these things from the call. It's really
Yeah.
helpful.
And it's just smart. It's just a
Yeah,
smart way of doing it. And every seller, even whether we're talking about enablement teams or just the individual seller, every seller should be utilizing things like this. You should be recording your
100%.
calls and then you should be running prompts on that to understand the real deep points within it because it frees up your time to have the conversation. Gone are the days of where you used to write notes down. Still got a notepad next to me. I never write in it, but I've still got one. It's more just got doodles all over it and drawings in it. But gone are those days where
Yeah,
you would write notes down but yeah, it's absolutely how I'm processing. And people that aren't doing it really need to start switching on. That's the reality. Companies, I think, are still scared. I don't know if scared's the right word, but adverse, I guess, to actually deploying AI in some places. But I've said this time and time and again, if you're not allowing your internal salespeople to use AI, they're already doing it. They're
yeah. I
already
mean,
doing it.
there's ways to go about it. I think
Yeah.
I understand that the trepidation from companies,
Yeah, of course.
especially
It's
when you're
natural.
dealing with sensitive data, but there's ways to go about it. And yeah, I don't see why you wouldn't.
Yeah, exactly. And salespeople are doing it behind their backs anyway. From what I'm hearing, it will happen.
No,
No such thing. No such thing. Alrighty, so let's recap, and I appreciate this. It's good to sort of to go into detail here. So we know that writing is now a superpower, right? Writing is the superpower. Utilizing generative AI to help with that, and actually focus on designing that buyer journey that's worth paying a premium for. And hey, failing that, just speak to Lawrence. Speak to Lawrence at Storytecher. Storytecher.com, right? What's the URL to the website?
yeah, so the website will probably be up by the time this comes out. But in the meantime, you can just check me out on LinkedIn. It's
Okay, nice.
LinkedIn.com/n/Sir Lawrence Wayne. You can hit me up on there, shoot me a DM, and I'm happy to chat.
I'll get it up on the screen. The team tend to put a nice picture of you, and you can have your. So anyone watching the podcast on YouTube, which is kind of the biggest channel for this, they'll get it up on the screen with a couple
Love
of
it.
links with your business name. But yeah, make sure you connect with Lawrence because I mean I met Lawrence. When did we met at the NEC, right? Last year
That's
out.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was in Birmingham.
Yeah. So I'm trying to get the team to get us to sponsor the event this time round. So I won't say it too loudly in case they're listening. Of course they are. But yeah, it'd be good. I'll definitely be there regardless again. And yeah, this has been great. And thanks, Lawrence. It's been great having you on. Unless there's anything else you wanted to say before we wrapped up.
Nah, man. Anytime, Jack. I love talking to you. And hopefully this helps if you're listening. Looking forward to just pushing things forward, man. I think enablement is in a getting back to a really good place, but we still got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great words.
Yep.
Thanks, Lawrence. Don't work too hard. And this has been Enablement Uncanned. Thanks, everyone.